I don't have to introduce myself, probably. I will be the chair of this track for today. And it's my pleasure to announce Csaba. We will talk on getting root with benign AppStore apps from, say, the Apple Vault. And this one came quite early in the CFP. And the program committee, which consists of members of ENW and some external persons at times, pretty much immediately jumped on it. It had to, we have a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the best rating. It got all 5s. So we accepted the talk very early, but then it turned out there might have been factors which could have prevented the talk from happening. So I'm very happy you are here. Csaba, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here. This is my first time being in Troopers, both as a speaker and as an attendee. I really love the conference and the city. I'm here with my family, and we did some sightseeing in the past couple of days, and it's a really nice place as well. So my talk is about getting root with benign AppStore apps. So basically, it's about a privilege escalation issue I found in macOS. A couple of words about myself. I'm currently working in a red team in our company. Before that, I was working as a blue teamer for 5 years. I maintain a kernel exploitation Python toolkit. It's on my GitHub. I have a wife and 2 small kids. They are with me here, and I do love lots of hiking and yoga and this kind of stuff. So to the talk. This talk is not just about the actual privilege escalation issue on itself, but basically my goal was to show the entire process. How did I went from finding the bug, talk about my mistakes, my failures, what didn't work out, what did work out, where did I give up actually during the process, and kind of show the entire stuff, because originally my goal wasn't to find privilege escalation issues in macOS. I just started up by looking for dylib hijacking issues in a particular application. So as for the agenda, I will do a quick recap on dylib hijacking on macOS. Then I will talk about how to subvert the installation process in macOS. Then how to develop an app to the App Store. That's kind of quite interesting. Then I will talk about the privilege escalation on High Sierra. Then I will talk about how to modify installers, package files, how we can capture and redistribute paid apps from the App Store, and some recommendation and some ideas for future research, which I didn't have time to deal with. So in the beginning, as I said, I started with looking for dylib hijacking issues in a next-gen AV product. I actually didn't find any, but that started the whole process. So dylib hijacking, what's that? It's basically like DLL hijacking on Windows. Patrick Wardle gave a talk about it on Black Hat a couple of years ago. And so I will just do a brief summary of that. So all the credits for goes to him for his work. So there are 2 main types of dylib hijacking on macOS. One of them is weak loading of dylibs. Basically, there is this lc load weak dylib function. Basically, it says that try to load a dylib to the application, and if it's not there, then it's not important. The application can still run. So basically, the idea is that you look for application that uses this function, try to load a dylib that is actually not there, and to exploit this, you actually put your own dylib on that place and load it. The other one is the run path dependent dylib. Basically, there is a function on the loader to load these rpath dependent dylibs. These are dylibs that their location is not known at compile time. So there is an rpath variable that the loader can go and see and try to find that dylib. And it will do a sequential search, and the first dylib found, it will be loaded. So it's basically a little bit like search order hijacking on Windows. So basically what you can do, monitor or look for those rpaths variable inside an application. And if you find a path that doesn't exist, but it's earlier in the sequence, you put your dylib there, and that's it. It will be loaded. So how do you find vulnerable applications? Well, Patrick made a tool. It's called the dylib hijack scanner, DHS. You can download it, run it, and it will show you all the applications that are vulnerable. That's super easy. And basically, for exploitation itself, he wrote a Python tool that can construct or fix your dylib to work with hijacking. So this is something very, very easy. For the rpath dependent dylibs, you can start bash or terminal, and you can set this delete print rpaths variable to one. Start your application, and it will print you if it failed to load a particular dylib or not. And if there is a failure of loading, then it basically means that there is a vulnerability in that application, and you can put your dylib there. So that's kind of the manual process. So how do you exploit it? You create your own code. You can just create a C code with a constructor and put there whatever you want. Basically, you compile it and fix it. The dylib has to export the same functions as the original one. Additionally, you don't want the application to be broken, so you want your malicious dylib to refer back to the original one. And it has to be the same version of dylib than the original one. So these have to be fixed. Again, Patrick made a Python script to do all of this work. So it's pretty easy. And so just a quick demo how this works. So if okay, this is seen properly. So I set this variable to 1, and there are quite a few dylib vulnerabilities in many applications. One of them is Xcode, is full of it. So in Xcode, there is the LLDB. We start it, and we can see that rpath failed expanding this library. So we can just exit LLDB. I have already the C file prepared, so I can just compile it. Then using Patrick's tool to fix the dylib. So now we have this malicious LLDB. We need to create a folder where this, okay, I already created yesterday the folder, and basically then copy the LLDB file into that folder. And then we can run LLDB again, and it says hello world, and the C file I compiled was basically just printf hello world. So easy as that. So again, this is where I started, and then I run into a problem. actually before that. So there are other cases. If you run this DHS tool on your Mac, you will find plenty of those. For example, Microsoft Office have a couple of them. I sent it to Microsoft, and they said, oh, you actually need to be root to utilize this vulnerability, so this is not a security bug. I understand why they say it, but I don't necessarily agree. Avira had an issue. They said they will fix it. And there are others, like Xcode. But there is this privilege problem that you require to have root to actually utilize this vulnerability. And if you check the application folder in OS X or macOS, most of the applications are owned by root. So in order to place a dylib there, you have to be root. And if you are already root, then okay, you can use dylib hijacking, but is it really that a big deal or not? So it kind of annoyed me. And there are a couple of applications which are not owned by root. They are owned by the actual user. And we are talking about an admin user here, not a, I think most of the people usually are admin on their Mac. And I was wondering, okay, how do I end up there? What are the cases when the application is owned by root, and what are the cases when the application is owned by the actual user? So the first case, if there is an AppStore application and it's got installed on your system, it will be owned by root because the installer is running as root. And so the entire directory structure will be created as a root. The second case, when you download a package, or you have a package like Microsoft Office, and you install it, or VMware Fusion, or you name it, usually you require to enter your credentials to elevate privileges so it can be installed. As those will run as root, again, the application will be owned by root. And the last item is when you basically drag and drop an application from a DMG file or somewhere, then it's really copied by your ID, so you will own that application. So it annoyed me that you have to be root to place that dylibs into this application. And I started to wonder, can I bypass it? Can I place their dylib files without being root? And the answer is yes. And well, if it was no, I wouldn't be here today. So before I start the details, a couple of tools you can use for monitoring processes and find possible issues. One of them is FireEye Monitor app. It's a free tool. You can download it from their website. It's kind of the sysinternals Procmon for macOS. Not exactly, but a bit similar. You will have a process, network, and file events. It's pretty good. You can save the results. You can open them. It was okay. I had a few items that I didn't actually found in the event list, like when you install an application from the App Store, I didn't found the events that when the actual app is written to the /application folder, and maybe it was just me not finding it, or maybe it wasn't there at all. But yeah, I don't know. But it's still a great tool to use. Next one, Objective-C, again, Patrick Wardle. He does quite a bunch of tools. He did an open source process monitoring library for macOS that's called procinfo. And he made an example tool for that. That's procinfo example. And it will log you process IDs, arguments, signature info, user information, file attributes. So basically, you can see all the details on the screen. So this will log every process start and exit event. And it's pretty good to monitor process execution. It will list parents and everything. But that's only for process execution. FS usage is file system event. That's basically file events. This is extremely detailed. It's much more detailed than I would like it to be. So you need to do plenty of filtering when you actually do this FS uses, because this just gives a whole lot of information. If you don't filter it, there is no way you will scroll through or consume it in a good way. So we have a couple of cases. So the first one is how to bypass root permissions in case of AppStore application. How we can subvert the actual installation process. So how you can drop any file in the application folder without being root. So first, check the folder structure of the actual application. So .app, so an application which ends for .app is not a file. It's actually a folder. So it's like a sort of package, but it's a folder containing resources. Like think of an installation directly on Windows. So it will contain all the executables, resources, dylibs, the plist files, and most of the things that the application is require. So just explore it and record where do you want to drop your actual file. Then delete the app. So if you go to Launchpad, you can delete an AppStore app as a regular user. You don't need to elevate your privileges. You just hold it down, says delete, and it will be deleted. Again, even if the application is owned by root, you can still delete an AppStore app that way. So again, you are still running as a normal user. Then you go to the application folder and you recreate the application folder structure because you have write access to the /applications folder, and you drop there your file. Then you go to the App Store and reinstall your application, and it will install nicely into the folder structure you already created. And yeah, you pretty much placed any file into the application folder you wanted. You just need to delete the app, recreate the folders, reinstall it, and then it's there. So this works to date. Actually, Apple said that they consider it as a future security enhancement to fix it. And so for me, having write access to the applications folder, it's kind of having write access to program files in Windows. But in Windows, admin users do have write access to program files if they run in high integrity mode. But going from admin medium integrity to admin high integrity is not a security boundary in Windows. While in macOS, going from admin to root is a security boundary. So there is a bit difference here, and I don't really know why regular user needs to have write access to the applications folder, because every user has their own applications folder under the user directory, but still you have it. So you can create there, and usually if you drag and drop application, you drag and drop those into the applications folder and not to your own user's application folder. So just how it works. I will pick up this app because this will come back later. It's the Crontab Creator. Right now it's empty. I can go on and it's just the contents and the regular stuff. So again, I'm just running as a regular user. I can delete it. So there are no issues with that. Actually, so I can just create the folder and I don't know. And then I can go back to the App Store and download it again. And I have my text file there, and again as my regular user, and then the rest is placed there by the installer. So this works to date. So I don't need to be root to do dylib hijacking for AppStore apps. And then it hit me, and I don't know how, but I wonder, can I do something else with this? Okay, I can drop their files, but what about symlinks? I can create symlinks. What will happen to those? So the discovery was that symlinks are being followed. So the installer runs as root, and it will follow symlinks whenever it moves file to the application folder. So if you create a symlink inside the your app to be installed app folder, like for the contents or for the macOS folder or for something, to another folder pointing somewhere in the system, basically you can redirect the writes to that folder. So you can drop any file from the App Store to a location you want. And not everywhere, but on most places. So how do you do that? Again, you go and record the folder structure, delete the app, you recreate the folders, you create a symlink, for example. So on any app contains macOS, that's the folder containing the actual macO file, the actual binary for the application itself. You reinstall the app, and yeah, the file that inside the macOS folder, so your macO binary, in this example, we'll go to the opt folder. So what we cannot do, and I spent hours playing with this because I was, okay, that's nice. If I can drop files anywhere or almost anywhere on the file systems, hopefully I can use it for privilege escalation, as it will come later. But it still had the constraint of the file name will be the file name that comes from the App Store. So I cannot modify the file name. So one thing I cannot do is I cannot write to zip protected places. So like the /system is protected by zip. If you have turned it on, even if you are root, you cannot write to those places. And you cannot overwrite files you want with the name you want. Because what I wanted, okay, I want to overwrite a file on my system, which usually runs as root on boot up, with a file from the App Store, but their name usually doesn't match. So I wanted to overwrite that file with the name I want, but didn't work. So I started to actually experiment and look into how the move happens. So if you follow from up to bottom, so let's create a file called A, put some content into it. Then let's create a symlink to that file called B. If we list it, we can see that we have the file A, and we have a symlink B pointing to A. Now, if we print out the contents of B, that's as it points to A, it will print it out. Then if I write any content into B, that will be written to A. But then I have a third file called C, And what I want to do is overwrite A with C with the name A. And that doesn't work. If I try to move C into B, what will happen? C will become B, and the symlink is gone. So I cannot overwrite A specifically. I spent hours with this, and it just doesn't work. So I cannot overwrite files with custom names I want. So still, can I get root if I can drop files anywhere? Yes. So I had a couple of privilege escalation ideas. For example, find an application in the App Store that has the same name that runs as root on your system, drop it there, override that file, and it will execute as root. I didn't find any, to be fair, I didn't look for too much. I think the likelihood to find a good app that will be good for you is very low, but still. The other idea I had, you have the Crontab folders, and if you can place there a file that has the name root, and if it's a proper cron job file, then it will be executed as root. Now, there are probably no such files in the App Store. Actually, Xcode has a couple of files, cron job files, but the name wasn't root and the contents wasn't good for me. So if there is no such file in the App Store, then let's just create your own app with the file you want. Or additionally, you can write a malicious dylib, drop it somewhere, and hopefully it will be loaded by an application that's running as root. So at this point, I became a bit lazy, to be honest. I'm not doing, because to prove the idea properly, I had to develop an application for the App Store. And I never coded either in Objective-C, Swift. I didn't have a app developer ID, nothing. And usually I do it in work and not in my free time. And it's okay, I thought that I will just report to Apple. And I sent it. And they came back and say, hey, our vetting process will spot any malicious app. And I was thinking, okay, it's not that. It's not about the app being malicious. It's you utilizing the app in a malicious way. And it's probably me didn't explain them properly what was the issue. But I took a deep breath and decided, okay, I will try harder. Any offensive circuit defense here? Yeah, I decided, okay, I will go down the rabbit hole further and I will start developing an app. Now, planning, so again, I have no developer experience at all, let's say. I can do some scripts, but I'm not a developer, especially not for macOS. But my idea, okay, the easiest way probably is going with doing a cron job file. But I had to have a valid reason to have an app in the App Store with the file for me. So I came up with the idea, okay, I will do a Crontab editor. For the App Store, actually there are only 1 or 2 doing this, and my one is free. The other 2 are paid. So actually it's a useful app. I checked a couple of weeks ago, and I realized that actually people from around the world are downloading that application. So yeah, I had to have a developer ID, so I went and paid for that. And when I had to choose between Swift and Objective-C, so this syntax in Objective-C, so this is an object, and this is its function, and I just didn't. It just freaked me out. That's not for me. Swift is much more like C, so I just, okay, I will go learn Swift, and I took a CBT, 4-hour CBT, and learned the basics of Swift, which was more than enough to actually create a a GUI application. So pushing apps to the store, that's actually fairly easy. So first you create a bundle ID at AppStore Connect, which is the com, your company, your app name, whatever, then which is here. Then you go and create an app referring to the bundle ID, populate with details, you upload your app from Xcode directly and submit. That's surprisingly pretty easy to do. Now there is the time issue. One mistake costs you like 24 hours. If you ever try to develop an exploit or do fixing, you load like the debugger, you make your mistake. Okay, no problem, I will restart the debugger, fix my stuff. Now, doing this here, it costs you like 1 day of waiting time, which is super annoying when you are close to your goal. So in my case, I did my first push, waited 24 hours or 12 hours. So it can be anytime between 12 hours to 48 hours. I was lucky going usually closer to the 12 hours time frame. And they rejected it, and they said, okay, you don't properly close the application when you close the X, and there is no way to bring back the window. This doesn't conform with the App Store guidelines, so fix that. That's actually one-line fix. I fixed it. It got waited again 24 hours. It got approved, and then I realized that, okay, this privilege escalation issue doesn't work on Mojave. Okay, no problem. I have a High Sierra VM. I will load that app there, and we run it. And then I try to install it on a High Sierra, and it turned out that I compiled my application for a minimum requirement for Mojave. So I couldn't try it. Again, it just setting in Xcode what is the minimum OS required. Compiled it again, waited 24 hours, it got approved, and yeah, it worked. This is the application. I took this design from a Crontab website. Yeah, so you can actually create a Crontab file with it. So how it works? This application has 8 examples for Crontabs for the users. One of them is called root, and the contents of the root will basically run this every minute, this backup apps shell script. As you have write access to the applications folder, you can place there that script. And it has 8 more examples under different name like John, Mike, whatever. You create the app, and basically all these example files are inside the resources folder. I could place these examples as an embedded string, but then it wouldn't work. So I actually place the real files in the. You install the application, you create the script file, and yeah, you have, like, I put simply run terminal in the backup apps shell script. You give it executable privileges, and then you have a terminal running as root. So I have a video of this. So this is recorded from on High Sierra. So this is the application. You can see that there is a version 101 because I had to do a fix for run it on High Sierra. On the application folder, you can see that there is no Crontab Creator application right now, and I'm running as my regular user. So I will create the folder. And then we go into, and create the other folders. So usually all the other stuff are in the contents first. And then the resources folder is inside the contents. So we create a symlink to the cron job folder. So that's there. I'm listing the contents of the Crontab folder, and actually to list it, you need to be root, just to show that it's empty right now. And then we go and install the application. Now let me, so if you install an application, usually if you didn't buy it before, even if it's free, so you can see that all those 8 files and some other junk is dropped to the cron job folder. And we'll list what inside root. Let me forward it. Okay. So in the meantime, this happens. So basically, here I create the shell script. So when you first buy an application, you need to enter your Apple ID to buy it, even if it's free, unless you clicked Save Credential for free applications. So if you want to execute this attack remotely on a computer, it will not work if the user doesn't have the didn't select save my Apple ID credentials for free applications, because in order to install even a free application, you need to enter an Apple ID. So basically, the script file is created, and right now we are waiting for cron to execute it, as it runs on every minute. It will start it when the clock flips to 17. I should probably place some drummers in the videos, but it should pop up in a couple of seconds. And yeah, and as you can see, it runs as root. So this doesn't work on Mojave, and I cannot go into the details of the fix because it wasn't fixed in a way I wanted to. So there is let's say, a bypass for it, which is still being worked by Apple. But okay, so these were AppStore apps, and with a nice privilege escalation as a side effect. But I wanted to bypass root folder permission also for the other files, for package files, which are also owned as root. So it's basically about infecting a package file, which is maybe not really a bypass, because the user still authenticates when he executes the package files. And if you embed any new file in a package file, you break its signatures, and Gatekeeper will block it by default. And you need a way to infect a package file, maybe a man-in-the-middle or something. If you add, interestingly for me, if you add a file to an application, to the app folder, It doesn't break its signature because the signature is working based on file levels, so the macOS file and the dylib files are signed, not the entire bundle. So how do you infect an installer? You grab a package file. You can grab an AppStore package or whatever you want. There is a tool to grab package files from the AppStore. You unpack it. So macOS is a nice PKG utility to handle package files. You decompress the payload, which is the app folder basically. You embed your file. You recompress the payload. You clean up stuff, and you repackage the entire package. And just to show how it's pretty. So I have a package file here. It's called parcel. I grab it from the App Store. Nothing against this application. I just picked it up randomly. It can be anything. And I created a script, a Python script to add a file to it. So instead of running all these commands manually, it's easier this way. So I want to infect the parcel up, and I want to embed this hi.txt. It creates, I have an infected package, and just to so if I install the normal application, so it goes to the application and it's parcel. And yeah, so this is just the regular app. So let me delete this. And then install the infected one. So it's again there, and you have this hi.txt embedded. So this is a way to, let's say, bypass the root folder permission for package files. So another thing I run into, so there is a script to grab package files from the App Store, because every application in the App Store comes down as a package, but it will be installed by the installer application, and you don't see all these prompts. It's a free tool. It's AppStore Extract. That's the name. You can download it from GitHub. And what I found is if you grab a package from the App Store and take that package, take it to another system, you can just install it. So even if it's a paid application and you grab the package, put it on a torrent site or whatever, people can download it and actually use that package file and run that application. Probably in-app purchases will not work. And what I see that there is really no verification if you, in the installer or in the application itself, that you actually purchase that application or not. Apple said that there is some guidance for developers to do this check actually, but as I saw, probably not many of them doing that. And obviously you will not get the App Store updates for that application, but still it's an easy way to redistribute these apps. Obviously, before you redistribute it, you need to buy it, but then it works after it. So some closing thoughts. My recommendation for Apple or for the fixes. So I think that installer shouldn't follow symlinks at all and should stop if the folder is already existing. And they shouldn't have access to sensitive location. And this is what's being done in Mojave. Or I think the perfect fix would be if when you install an application and that application folder is already there and it's not owned by root but by the user, then the installer should just exit and die, and the application shouldn't be installed at all. So that would prevent all of the issues presented here, in my opinion. And I think the application container or the folder, the app folder, should be verified for number of files. I think that's, as I know, that's pretty much fixed. So there is no data content on that in that folder, and there are plenty of abuses for dropping their malicious dylib or any malicious file or embedding your custom stuff in there. If the app folder would know how many files it should have, like let's say 30, then if it would be verified on every exit, that would solve other issues as well. And for paid apps, they should only run so applications should verify themselves if the user actually purchased that application or not. But there is, I have a research idea which I didn't have time for. So as we see before, if you go to Launchpad, you can delete AppStore installed applications without authentication. And those applications are owned by root, but you run Launchpad or you give commands to Launchpad as a regular users. So potentially there is an issue, a user deleting a folder which is owned by root. But I don't know how Launchpad knows which application is AppStore installed and which are not. Because if you go there, oops, and I hold it down, you see that I cannot remove all of them, just those that are coming from the App Store. So there should be some database that stores this information, but I don't know where it is. And I don't know if the user has rights to edit the database. If the user have rights to edit it, then you have a privilege issue. If not, then it's fine. I found that the actual layout for Launchpad can be found here on this link. And it's user editable, but this is only layout information. So it's a SQLite database, and I haven't found any tables which actually contains information about file location or if it came from the App Store or whatever. Or maybe it's there, it just me didn't found it. So that was, or thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
We have time for some questions, if there are any. Guy over there. Oh, I will bring you the mic.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. A simple question about the package that you modify at the end, the parcel one, I think. This one is been signed, or
no.
There is a valid app developer behind this package or not?
No, so the application is not, so the new package I create is not signed.
But
so
the previous one that you used?
The previous one?
So the parcel one that you modify, it's signed or not signed?
Not the external package, but there is an embedded package, and I believe that is signed.
So if you use this embedded package that is signed, when you rebuild it, you can add this signature in the new package. You need to you can use the package as the old version of the package manager from Apple, and you can add your own package and specify, I would like to use this kind of signatures from these app developers. So that's another trick that you can do. So you can rebuild yours, but you can also specify, and instead to rebuild without signing, you can say, oh, and by the way, I would like to use this app developer from the previous package. So
Okay.
we can talk about that later.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions over there?
Thanks for the talk. So have you encountered in the communication with Apple, as you filed that to Apple, about the notary system that they are inventing, or not inventing, that they switch on pretty soon? What is the feedback from Apple on the notarizing all installers? You are aware of that?
No.
Apple has a program that soon, so it could be any time in the next few months and weeks, that they require that by default installers have to be notarized. So there's another mechanism of Apple of checking where the source of a package is coming from. So, and this should prevent such things. I think there's still ways to surround that, but however, so Apple at least would have hinted you to that future mechanism they will build in.
No, actually, it's to be honest, it's very hard to communicate with Apple in my experience. So compared to Microsoft has a very mature program for reporting security issues, and they are very fast and responsive. Sending anything to Apple, usually you get a notification, yeah, that we recorded it, but then they usually don't send you any updates until you ask them about the status. And even if you ask them, then it can take like 2 weeks before you get any answer. And they are usually very short and don't provide you too much information. So so the issue I had with Troopers initially, when I submitted this talk, I was still in the process of dealing with Apple disclosure, and I had very hard times getting like an authorization from them for presenting this. It took me like 2 or 3 months just to get that, and I literally sent them like emails for weeks and with no response. So with that in mind, they didn't even get me back if they had anything in mind how to fix things, and even they didn't tell me how they fixed the issue in Mojave. I just realized that it doesn't work, and I actually spent time a few weeks ago to check what's the fix, what is the fix really. So unfortunately, no. Wish they would.
Thanks again. Csaba?